Welcome to Sam's Be Well, Farewell. Thank you for being here for this much anticipated event. So with that, let's take some good deep breaths. That breath of life. Take that good deep breath flowing with the energies, breathing into the heart of you. Feel into this special message from dear, dear Sam. Breathe it in. Feel the energies open to it. Not just the words, open to what you feel. Take that good deep breath. That good deep breath. Breathe again as we open to Sam and his Be Well message.
Welcome. I am Sam. Sam, I am. We come together right now. It's December 13th, 2022. And we come together like this to, well, for me to say, farewell and be well. I am Sam. I come from the soul family of Tobias. I am of Tobias, meaning that I was the next incarnation of Tobias, even though it was thousands of years later, but I was that next incarnation. I came into this planet initially as what you would call a shell body. My physical body and my mind were about 10 years old. And then I infused myself from the soul of Tobias into that shell body called Sam. Sam, an acronym, of course, but it stands for a sovereign ascended master. May you all be Sams in that regard. Then I came to this planet infusing myself, embedding myself in that physical body, knowing that I wanted to be here for this time on the planet, knowing that there were some things I wanted to do. You see, as the last lifetime on a linear level for my soul, there were a few things I wanted to experience on this planet that I hadn't done in past lifetimes. I always followed the rules. I always tried to do the right thing, and I always feared and honored God. But in this lifetime, I wanted to come in and be a free soul on the planet. And that I did. As I've said in some of our gatherings, my parents were rather indifferent, which was just fine. They were both college professors, and it allowed me a lot of time just to be. Without a big family, without parents that were restrictive, I could just be. Now, it wasn't that there was a tremendous amount of love in the family, but I didn't come in for that. It wasn't a karma family at all. It was, in a way, you could say, a spiritual adoption family. And I had many good years on the planet. Many, many good years. If you remember, if you watched The Dream of the Merlin and the talk that I gave there, you'll know my story, but let me just give you a recap in case you've forgotten or in case you're new to it. I didn't go to college. I didn't need to, didn't want to, didn't feel any need to be really so restricted for 4, 5, maybe 6 years. And I didn't need to because I knew I would be getting an inheritance from both sides of my family, from the paternal and the maternal. Enough money where I could have lived a nice life for the rest of my lifetime. So why waste 4 years sitting in college when the money was already there? And this offered me a lot of freedom. And as I've said so many times, if you do plan to come back for another physical lifetime on this planet, make sure to pick well. Pick the parents, the family well. Make sure there's no karmic traces whatsoever. Pick a random family, but a good family. And in this case, I certainly did. I got along famously with both sets of grandparents. One lived fairly close by, the other on the other part of the country, but because I was the only child, And because of their relationship with their children, which would be my parents, they left all the money to me. Now, I'm not the type that would go out and spend a lot. Remember, I come from the lineage of Tobias. And with his Jewish nature, he was very, very careful. He was quite the trader in that lifetime, but very careful with his monies. And I was like that too. I met a girl and fell in love. And it wasn't that I had pre-planned a meeting with someone from my past lives. It wasn't like we were destined to be. But I met this girl. Callie was her name. Oh, and we felt deeply, deeply in love. You see, I was working in the orchards, the fruit and the apple orchards in the area of Oregon in the United States. I loved being in the orchard. I will always remember this lifetime of being in the apple orchards, whether it was weeding or watering or picking or resting the fields for the winter. That was my favorite thing of all. And this is where I met Callie. She, too, had that same passion. We'd pick apples all day long. It wasn't about how much money you made. It was being there, picking the fruits, very symbolic of life itself, picking the beautiful, delicious fruits that have grown on the tree just for you to eat them, to savor them, to be sensual with them. So Kelly and I had that in common. We had the same sense of grounding in the earth, but the same sense of opening up to the heavens. We fell deeply in love, and those were some of the very finest times, because with Kelly, I, Sam, and Tobias, we learned of the one thing that had eluded so many of the soul lifetimes on this planet: deep and true love. You know, so many relationships now, they're based on karma. They're based on coming back with someone and, yes, initially feeling that strong desire for them, but so often when you roll back the layers, there's so much old karma. With Kelly, it was not like that. We picked in the fields together. We went for long, long drives. I'd been fixing up and remodeling old, what you would call muscle cars. I loved cars. And then our plan was to travel. Our plan was to go to Europe, travel, eventually end up in Israel, because part of the reason for my lifetime as Sam was to go back to the sacred lands of Tobias for him, to feel into the energies, to breathe the air once again, and to bring a message from Tobias to those lands, a message of farewell and be well, a message from Tobias to the lands of Israel, that now comes a time of great shift. And now comes a time when all the peoples of Israel, all the peoples of Palestine, now come back together. That was his message, and that is what I eventually brought to Israel. But back to our plans to travel. We were ready to go in 2019, late 2019. We were going to backpack throughout Europe and possibly into Asia. We would find a way down to Australia and to New Zealand. We would get up to Japan and Korea. We had the money, but we were still going to do the backpacking because that was more in harmony with us. We would sleep out in the forests at night, swim in the lakes to clean off. We wanted to be as close as we possibly could to the beauty of nature, because, you see, that was another thing Tobias loved so much, nature, and he never had the time to say a proper goodbye. So I was going to do that for him. Goodbye, dear Gaia. Goodbye to the nature that has supported this land, this earth, this planet. Towards the end of 2019, our plans were changed. You see, Kelly was living with grandparents. She preferred them over her regular parents because her regular parents were rather stiff. where her grandparents were old hippies, and that was much more to her liking and desire. But they took ill, both of them, towards the end of 2019, to where Kelly wanted to take care of them, said she couldn't go on the trip, and I decided at that point I needed to go anyway. I would come back. I would be there once again with Kelly one day, but I needed to do this. This was part of my lifetime as Sam. As it turns out, even plans that gets changed again. Because right about the time I was ready to leave to start going traveling, this thing called COVID came about on the planet. It shut everything down. It was nearly impossible to travel. And at that point, well, with no sadness or regret, I had to stay back. I couldn't travel like I had wanted to. But that also meant more time with Kelly and helping her with her delightful grandparents, seeing her every day once again. So it did not weigh heavy on my heart. I knew one day I would go back and travel. When things loosened up with COVID, when things became a little bit easier in the year of 2022, I decided to make my journey, to go, to travel. And the last time we talked, I was literally in Israel. I talked during the Dream of the Merlin event, and I was just finishing up my tour through that area, ready to come back to Oregon. Oh, it was going to be harvest time within a matter of a few days or weeks, and I knew it was time to come back. But it was something else a little different. It wasn't just because of going back to the farm. By the way, the farm I had bought during COVID, the owner of that farm had passed away, and I bought the farm with the money I had from inheritance, 12 beautiful acres. Well, in the meantime, after I got back from Israel, I bought another property adjacent to it, another 10 acres of beautiful orchards, all part of this whole idea of nurturing the planet while nurturing yourself. Well, I came back, not just because the orchards were calling, but I came back because I had heard the call while I was in Israel. I heard the call, come home now, come home. So when we last talked, during the beautiful Dream of the Merlin event, I knew it was time to come back. I got back to Oregon. I helped with the final finishing of the picking of the crops. I did a lot of paperwork that had to be done. And one of the parts of the story, this whole story, the sad part was that during COVID, Kelly actually died also. Yes, during COVID, I told the story. She got it, and 4 days in the hospital. And I was there each and every day, sleeping in the car, waiting for good news. But one day I got the call that she had died. And it was such a sad thing. But I also realized after that, when I went on my journeys, when I went to Israel finally, that she really didn't die. She was with me the whole time. She was still back in the orchard. She was still there, waiting for me. So even though in the physical realm she had crossed over, it still felt like she was with me each and every day. Perhaps it was her that was calling to say, come home, to her in the orchards. Perhaps it was her calling, knowing that I would eventually be coming back home to the other side. When I got back to Oregon, as I said, I finished the paperwork, and I created a co-op. A co-op is like a legal entity. I created a co-op and turned everything over to my loyal staff so that they would own it. After completing the purchase of the land next door, including that in the co-op as well, I knew it was time to go. Finally, I'd been called home by Tobias, by Kelly, and by the very time that you're living in right now. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but that would be Heaven's Cross. Right now, as we sit here, it is December 13th. You'll be hearing this a few days later. I'll be coming to the Shout on December 17th, 2022, right here in the studio. Not physically, but energetically. It'll be my last stop. And then on December 21st, on the winter solstice, I'll be leaving. How, you ask? How will I leave? Simply. You see, I've already told the staff at the orchards, the ones who now own it through the co-op, that I wanted to travel. I wanted to go to far and distant places. I wanted to go beyond. So they assume I'm just going to be traveling the world and that they'll be owning the farm and taking care of everything. But what I'm literally going to do on December 21st is go off into the orchards towards the end of the day. And Kelly will be there to meet me. You see, she left, but she really never left. She was waiting for me. And then we'll walk through the orchards, hand in hand, feeling into all the work that we put into them, all the beauty of our relationship under the trees, and we'll cross over to the other side. No body will be left behind. There won't be police reports. There will be no death reported. You see, because everybody thinks I'm just gone off, traveling far beyond. We'll go to the other side where I'll reunite once again with Tobias, with all my soul family. And then a big part of my work and your work will kick in. So that's a little background. That's me, Sam, leaving in just a few short days. Oh, don't shed any tears, because it's not a sad thing. I'm being called home by my soul. I learned what I came to the planet to do in this short lifetime. I learned about love. I learned about nature. For Tobias, I said goodbye to Israel and to Gaia. So no, in a way, I rejoice in going back. Even as, you could say, the son of an ascended master, coming to this planet, it can be very difficult. I don't need to tell you that. It can be very, very difficult and challenging. On the other hand, filled with so much beauty. The time in the orchards, the time with Kelly, the time with my staff. It can be so fulfilling. Now I'd like to leave you a few things. I use the analogy of a tree, an apple tree, but it also applies to you, to your body and to your mind. Number one, be organic in your life. Be organic. Now I mean that from several different perspectives. I learned a lot about organic farming, and I learned that, you see, in the organics, things work with each other. When we occasionally did use chemicals, I could feel it. And I'm not saying chemicals are bad, but feel into the difference. Chemicals, there's an assault on the energies of the earth or the plant. It's a strong force used to take out things like insects or fungus, or perhaps the fertilizers, the chemical fertilizers used to boost production. But you can feel the energies. I could feel them. It was like an energy assault on that living thing. And oftentimes, most times it worked, but yet it created a scar within that thing that was living, that tree, that plant. So we used organics. When you use an organic method, it's working in compatibility. Instead of killing the bugs that might be on the tree, it's inviting the bugs to leave, to go someplace else. It's saying this is sacred territory, not for you to invade it as you do, dear bugs, but this is sacred territory. Instead of harsh chemical fertilizers, we use compost and manures from like cows, sheep, pigs, and these worked remarkably well because they were in compatibility. A really good compost or manure is in a state of decay, literally changing the molecular structure of the component that was. But what happens in that state of decay, it is releasing energies that then can be absorbed by the tree, by the ground, by the leaves, by the fruit, and it is a very compatible type of energy flow. Be organic in your life. Doesn't mean you have to eat all organic food, but by now you should be able to taste and feel the difference when you eat organic versus foods that had been assaulted by chemicals. But I also mean it in your life. Come back to yourself. Come back to your grounded, real self. It's very difficult living on the planet, and oftentimes you put artificial things around yourself. You use, whether it's stimulants or whether you use, imagine yourself to be something that you really aren't. Whether you're trying to force energies on yourself versus using an organic approach. It's all your energy. Be so organic with yourself, so true and real with yourself. Stop searching for the answers somewhere else. They're right here. And yes, so many of the things in your life, in your body, and even in your mind are in a state of decay. But there's also a beautiful kind of an orchestrated effect that takes place. The things that die simply release energy to the new things that grow in your life. Be organic with yourself in your thoughts, in your dreams, in your actions. It means come back to you. There's nothing else out there. You don't have to make up anything else. You don't have to do anything else. So come back to you. And number 2, there's always bad apples on the tree. Oh, it could be from insects. It could get worms. It could just be that particular apple just didn't have the life force energy flowing through it to blossom as a beautiful apple. With the bad apples, just take them off the tree, compost them, allow that energy to convert. But yes, there's always bad apples in your life. There's plenty of bad apples. You've met them, other people. They're just energy incompatible with you. Doesn't make them wrong, but your energies in theirs just don't flow. There might be bad people that do bad things, but don't curse the whole tree just because of a few bad apples. And that's what happens so often. Oh, I've seen that they curse the whole tree. And that energy goes out to the whole tree. No, just pick off the bad apples and compost them. Bring them to wisdom. Even with things with yourself that you don't like. Don't curse all of you just because of a few things. Pick those things off. Get them out of your life. Put them in your spiritual compost pile so the energies can come back and serve what you do want to be. Don't look at all of yourself as bad. Don't doubt all of you just for a few bad apples on your tree. Pick them off. That also opens space, frees energy to support all the good apples that are on the tree, to bring life force vitality to the things that you do like about yourself. So yes, there are a few bad apples, but don't curse the whole tree. Next, prune the tree. Prune the tree. Yeah, it gets branches that need pruning back. It has the bad apples. Sometimes you want to encourage a taller growth, sometimes a wider growth. And this takes a little pruning. And what it means to you in your life is the things you don't need or want, let them go. They're not yours. If you're carrying things like ancestral karma, past life karma, Let them go. Prune the tree. You have every right to prune it. When you prune the tree, it allows for that better airflow. It allows for the outreaching branches to receive more sunlight. In this case, it would be to receive more of your divine self. You don't have to carry all that stuff on your tree, the things that you don't want, the things that keep the real joys in your life from really becoming true and real. So prune the tree. Oh, it doesn't mean cut the whole tree down. I've seen people do that. They over prune. Just gently and lovingly let go of the things that you don't want anymore in your life. Put them in the compost pile. Let the energies decay and return as new life force energies. So the other thing, in addition to pruning the tree, is to let the energies flow. When you're growing something, the energies need to be able to flow. If something is put in a corner, something is put in the dark, something is not nurtured properly, there's not a flow. With the apple trees, it was a matter of feeling into when the orchard was in need of more of our organic fertilizer, compost, or when it needed more water or less water. And it was all about eventually the flow, the harmony with the soil and the roots, all the energies flowing through the tree up into the apples. So we paid particular attention. Is there flow in the orchard? I'm not saying it was like feng shui, but kind of similar. You could feel the energy flow in the orchard. You could feel whether it was hitting into itself or whether there was a very harmonious flow and pattern in the energies that was nurturing the trees, that was causing the trees to rejoice. A tree will rejoice if it is in its flow. Take a look at your own life. The flow. Are you giving yourself enough space, or are you backed into a corner? Are you limiting the natural, organic flow of energy through you because maybe you don't feel you're worthy? Maybe you don't think you're ready. Maybe you don't even know it's there, but it is. There is always a flow of energies in the orchard of your life, your body, your mind. And right now, the flows are changing. With so much happening right now, the flows are changing to serve you even in a more clean way than ever before. Pay attention to the flow. Are you in the flow or not? And you don't have to go yourself alter the flow. You don't have to change things that make the flow better. It's simply letting yourself be back in the natural flow of your soul. That's when you have things like synchronicity. That's when you have magic. That's when everything just works out and you don't have to do all the managing and manipulating. And then the other thing, use logic when logic is needed. Use the mind when you're doing things like when I was repairing cars. Oh, I had to use logic. I had to know where the parts and pieces fit. When you're driving a car, when you're doing something on a very human level where logic is needed, where you have to think, use that logic. Don't be afraid of it. But where logic is not needed, be in your dreams, be in your passion. Get out of the mind, because while the mind serves such a beautiful purpose, it does limit, and I found out very early on, to not apply logic to all things in my life. Whether it was about going to the university, whether it was about my next plan, my next thing, I used logic where logic was needed. I had to know when to do certain things in the orchards, but for my life, instead of applying logic, which limits you, which keeps you in old patterns, I used my dreams and I used my passions. I felt into these rather than always thinking through things. Right now, the human mind, your human mind, is starting to change. It's lightening up, it's letting go. And a whole new part of your mind is emerging that knows how to connect between the non physical realms, the non logical, some would say, into the quantum, into the metaphysics. And it knows how to do this and then relay those messages of a higher order to your mind. In the past, the mind has always been structured to build off of itself. Adamus calls it qualia. Everything is by association. But right now, with the changes that are taking place, right now, there's that part of your mind that understands, that has knowingness about things that are not logical, into the quantum, into the metaphysical, especially the communications with your soul. So that would be the next point, commune. Commune with your soul. And I know many of you say you have tried, you've sat for long hours, and you're waiting for voices, or you hear voices, but you know it's really not your soul. Don't get frustrated. It's been very, very difficult to feel into the other realms or have the other realms come here. But now, more than ever, commune with your soul. Breathe with your soul. When I communed with Tobias, I generally go out to the orchards where it was quiet, where it was filled with the beautiful energies of growing. And I would just listen, not expecting words or advice, not trying to force anything. I would just listen. I would then feel my soul. I would receive these packets of energy or communications from the soul. And in those packets were not a lot of words, but rather they were feelings. I knew how then to put it into my mind, to put it into words. But initially, it's just receiving the packets. And you see, you can have these packets from your soul. You'll feel them as they come in. Don't try to make sense. Don't try to be logical about them right away. Just let them come in, feel into it. Then that part of the brain that has been waiting, part of the brain that understands beyond the logic, it will kick in and help to share then with the rest of your mind and your body what these messages really are. So commune with your soul. Don't be afraid to talk to it. Listen to it, but don't expect that you're going to get words. Expect overall feelings like one of grand love and honor. And then as you commune more and more, you get into the other levels of the communing and feel into other things, greater and wider things that the soul is sharing. So do every day commune with your soul and also with nature and with other people and even with your human self. I'm leaving at this time because I also know it's perhaps the most important time on the planet ever. It's hard to see sometimes because you're right in the middle of it. There's all the activities and, I know there were days we were so busy in the orchards and I was so busy with paperwork, I forgot the bigger picture. But what's happening right now on the planet is the very reason why you're here, for Heaven's Cross. You'll hear Adamus and Kuthumi explain more about it in these coming months. This event takes place on March 22nd, 2023. One of the reasons I was called home was also to be back on my side, the non-physical side, for this. To help you ground and balance energies. You see, you're going to need it grounded and balanced on the earth, the human side, but also in the other realms. Heaven's Cross simply means that the consciousness on the planet has gotten to the point where the doors can open. more divinity, consciousness, energy, however you want to say it, more accessibility to the other realms is now there. But many people won't know because they don't have the consciousness to understand, and that's fine. But for those who understand and know, now as the heavens open and they intersect with each other, you'll have so much easier flow between the other realms, between your soul and yourself. But it can also be overwhelming to one who isn't grounded. It can be overwhelming because suddenly you have this very big amount of new consciousness, more of yourself. Well, it can truly shake up the human mind and the body if it's not grounded. Grounding on the human level, that's up to you to stay grounded. And with the work that's being done by Crimson Circle, with all the materials, all the information, that's another way of grounding. But in the other realms, you'll need grounding as you quickly traverse back and forth, as you stay on the planet in the and. You're human and divine. You'll need grounding in the other realms to make sure that it maintains a balance, a flow between the realms. Without the grounding, even in the other realms, you could open up to the accessibility to more divine. You can literally go into other realms, non-physical, but you could also get sucked in there where it's difficult to then come back to your grounded human self. So there are many of us now that are preparing for Heaven's Cross, for when you start traversing between earth and there, and earth and here where I am, and in the divine layers, and then from the divine back to earth, where you're going back and forth. You want that grounding on both sides. And that's what so many of us are going to be here for. Tobias, me, of course, Adamus and all of his characters, so many of the Shambra that have crossed over. FM, of course, is going to be integral in this. Sartre is going to greet many of you as you stay in the physical body, yet you now come into the other realms. You see, at first, when with Heaven's Cross, as you find it easier to traverse the realms, it sometimes is going to be so unknown to the human self, so human self not being able to understand it in a logical way, that you're going to need that guidance from both sides. That's one of the reasons why I'm leaving at this time, in just a few short days, to be there, to welcome you as you expand your consciousness into the heavens, and then bring it back to your human self on earth. It's one of the most beautiful events on this planet, something that's been long foretold. The world will become a different place. You'll see more separation in many ways, more divide, because so many won't be aware of what's happening, and yet there'll be many, many humans on earth who are aware of the new level of consciousness, that is helping to open the doors, to have the Heaven's Cross, and then even after that, the much higher amount of consciousness that's accessible to bring into the planet by individuals, not by groups, by individuals. We're here in the other realms also to help remind you that everything is going to go fast and crazy. What you thought you knew was no longer applicable, but then you realize that you know things that you didn't know you knew. Everything's going to seem as it's flipped upside down, that it's going to seem almost that the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. It won't literally, but everything changes so quickly. And Adamus will talk more about it, but at a metaphysical level, what's happening with particles and waves, with a new understanding that, of course, through the understanding that energy is just communication, but now, you see, everything right beyond the particle level is all waves. So actually, every particle, every atom is just a wave until you view it, and then it becomes a particle. And Adamus is telling me I'm getting into his territory, so I won't carry on too far, but my point is everything changes, even the way light and waves and particles interact. You're going to see phenomenal changes on the planet. But more than anything, it's about opening up, accessing you in a way that has never been possible, or almost impossible on the planet, and now it opens up. You are the Atlanteans. You are the ones that came here. From the temples of Tien and before that, you were the ones who worked with the crystalline energies to create the headbands, to improve humanity. But in a way, they also ended up limiting, restricting, imprisoning humanity. They kept consciousness trapped, prevented outside or additional consciousness of your soul, of you, to come in. And this happened not just with you, but with the entire planet. And it's been that way for a long, long time. It wasn't a mistake. There were reasons for it. There was nothing that you did wrong in your work in Atlantis with the headbands. But now it's time for these to come off. And that's what Heaven's Cross is about. You are the Atlanteans that will come back now to help release the global headband and allow the energies of Heaven's Cross to be here for anyone who is ready. You are the Atlanteans, I know that, who promised to be here and stay here at this time. And now is that time. So with that, my dear Shaumbra friends, I'll be here in spirit for your shout in just a few days, and then December 21st, late afternoon as the sun starts to set, I'm going to meet Kelly once again in the orchards, and we're going to take our final walk, me in human form, her in spirit. And then as the last rays of sun are dimmed by the new night, by the stars in the skies, then I'm going to take a deep breath and just leave. Back home, back to the other side. Integrating with Tobias, being in the light of dear Kelly. Oh no, we're not soulmates and we're not going to combine into one soul, but knowing her light is there. Ah, what a precious thing. It has been 23 short years on the planet, which the first 10 didn't count because I was just a shell body. 13 years of beauty and experience. I'll never forget the orchards. I'll never forget when I learned about who I was, where I came from, and who Shaumbra is. So with that, I bid each and every one of you not a farewell, because I'm sure we'll be seeing each other. But I bid you a be well on the planet. Live organic. Don't curse the trees for a few bad apples. Prune the tree. Let the energies flow. And above all, commune with your soul. On behalf of Sam and the soul of Tobias, I bid you a be well on the planet. Thank you.
And with that, please take that good deep breath. Take that good deep breath, letting the energies flow. Such a sweet message here from Sam. So much to allow, feeling into it, seeing the value of all the information. Can you breathe that in? Can you breathe that in? So much going forward shared by Sam. Breathe it in, feel it, and allow it. Take the good deep breath, feeling the grandness of his message. But equally, maybe some of us will miss him too. But he's there. Just breathe it in. It's all and. Just breathe it in and let yourself flow with it. Thank you for being a part of Sam's message. Sam's be well, farewell. Thank you.